Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for sitting through that quick little break here. As I said, we will be covering the possible MLB expansion, the article that Jet Passon just put out today on ESPN. Uh, but before we do, remember that if you want to be a bigger part of this show, leave a tip or donation. Have your message come across the screen. All you need to do is go to streamelements.com/GSMC sportsnetwork/tip. Again, streamelements.com/GSMC sportsnetwork/tip to be a bigger part of the show. But like I said, we're going to be covering the possibility of MLB expansion. Jet Passon, MLB writer for ESPN, put out an article today saying it's the second longest period in MLB history since its expansion. It's been almost 30 years since the league last expanded, that being in 1998 with the Diamondbacks and the Rays. And moving this league up to 32 teams is something that hasn't really been in conversation. Hasn't really been in conversation this entire time. There's been some conversation with the A's attempted move to Vegas, with the Rays attempting to play half of their season up in Canada. But there hasn't really been a lot of expansion talk. There has been some relocation talk. And the A's seem like they're going to move to Vegas, although that is a mess. That's a whole nother story, what's going on in there. But there's a couple pretty good candidates for places to have these new MLB teams. Some you might expect, some that could be good, some that you have never thought of. But yeah, we'll start with some of the more reasonable candidates. Some that Jet Passon brings up here in his article. The first one here is Nashville, Tennessee. In Nashville, Tennessee, obviously, very big sports city. They already have a football team there. They have a basketball team down the road in Memphis. And they're a team that can support these professional leagues, professional teams. They have a big baseball following with Vanderbilt, one of the best college baseball teams in the nation, already there. So they have a foothold in baseball. So adding a team there makes a lot of sense. Around a lot of other teams, not around too many other teams, I should say. Aside from the Nationals up in Washington, D.C., and the Braves over there in Atlanta, there's kind of a dead zone right in that area around the central East Coast. There's not that many teams right there. So adding another team there's a lot of floating fans. I know the Braves have a big foothold up in that area, and even the Phillies and Pirates and Nats out there to some extent. But adding a baseball team up there's a lot of floating fans in that area to take a hold of. So that's a very, very attractive option. Again, a big city that has shown that it can support sports teams. The other main city that Jet Passon mentions here in this article is Salt Lake City, Utah. Now, we look at a map again of where all 30 MLB franchises are. There's nothing out there in the middle of the country. You get to California, there's a couple teams, there's one in Arizona, but there's nothing in the middle there. Now the A's move into Vegas. That will help it move a little bit more to- towards that area. But Utah has a professional sports team in the Jazz. They have a minor league team that they can support, and they have been lobbying for a MLB team. It is a smaller market, but it's something that they've proven that they can support a team for with the Jazz. Now, there are a lot of other options. You know, you could go and try to expand the game outside of the US. You could go back to a place in Canada where they haven't had baseball in a while. You had the Montreal Expos, you have the Toronto Blue Jays right now, but the Expos haven't been there for a while, and they have proven that they can host these teams. Or maybe you go up to Vancouver and put a team over there. There's been reports of Montreal especially trying to get a baseball team back. We mentioned the Rays attempting to play half their season up in Canada. That was up there in Montreal. So adding a new team in there, maybe bringing back the Expos since they've moved to Washington, and restarting that franchise as the 31st team. It might be a nice little fit up there. Or maybe, again, staying out of the country, there's a lot of Latin American players. You go start a team in Puerto Rico, maybe, or the Dominican Republic, where many of these players are from. You can get a foothold you can get a bigger foothold than you already have in some of these Latin American countries to get that talent, spread the game of baseball even more than it already has. And it's not even that far. You go, Puerto Rico is not that far from Miami, where you already have a baseball team. You go set up a team there. It's not like the travel's going to be insane. It's not going to be any more crazy than it is for the Mariners up there in Seattle, which, if you have seen their travel logs, what they have to do every single year, the amount of miles that they log up from the Pacific Northwest is crazy. But getting a team down there in Puerto Rico, you already have a lot of people that are huge baseball fans. And you can help expand it outside of the U.S. just a little bit. But then we also have to ask the question of, will the MLB expand? Like Jet Bassett mentions in this story, it's been almost 30 years. This is the longest drought of adding new baseball teams since the 60-year stretch from 1901 to 1961, when they expanded from the original 16 teams to 18. And ever since then, they've been slowly expanding it until they hit those 30 teams in 1998. And it is unlikely to happen right now, because there's a lot of other things going on in baseball, a lot of bigger issues, a lot of more pressing matters. Rob Manfred doesn't seem like he has any intent in expanding right now. The Diamond Sports Group has gone bankrupt. They had the local television for about half of the league. And local television is a huge part of money in the MLB. It's where teams like the Yankees make so much money with their Yes Network. The Nationals and the Orioles were in a fight for years, bordering on a decade, I believe, a legal battle over MASN, the local sports network that broadcasts their game. And Boston obviously has NESN. That's where a lot of these teams make a lot of their money. And having that, as well as we mentioned, the Oakland A's being a whole mess, trying to move to Las Vegas, not having a stadium, they're basically homeless right now. They did not re sign with the Oakland Coliseum, and they don't have a stadium yet in Vegas. It's been a journey to get to even this point with them. So, having a homeless team, having collective bargaining coming up in a second, expansion isn't right on the table. But there's a lot of good spots all around the United States for MLB teams. Because expansion has been a big topic in almost every other major sport. If not expansion, then, relocation. We have this conversation with the NBA. They're on the verge of expanding. We have this conversation with the NFL. They're probably not about to expand, but there's conversation there. So why not the MLB? Why can't the MLB expand for the first time in 30 years? I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts here. Where do you think a good spot for an expansion team would be? Do you think the MLB should expand? Do you think it's a good idea for them to do this now? If you do, why? If not, why not? Me personally, I think it would be a great thing for them to expand. The MLB needs to get itself into more markets, and maybe go into a place, like I said, outside of the U.S. You go back to Montreal, maybe Mexico City or Puerto Rico. There's a lot of good options out there. But right around the next break, we will wrap up our show talking about the influx of sports betting coming into the industry, coming in, expanding itself. It's a big expansion show. So stick around. We will be right back.